18. Treasury Department. The Treasury Department has long contained components with an intelligence potential. Treasury attachés serving with American embassies provide valuable foreign economic intelligence for departmental units within the jurisdiction of the Undersecretary for Monetary Policy, as well as for other units, such as the State Department and other agencies represented on the United States Intelligence Board and the National Security Council. The Treasury Department is also developing and expanding its Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which will be utilized by a variety of agencies for training investigative personnel, as well as State Department security agents, Internal Revenue Service intelligence special agents, and internal security inspectors, Secret Service agents, and Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau special agents. Footnote: see U.S. Congress, Senate, Committee on Appropriations, Treasury, Postal Service, and General Government Appropriations, Fiscal Year 1976. Hearings, 94th Congress, First Session. Washington, U.S. Government Print Office, 1975. Pages 2309 through 2324. End footnote. Among the intelligence units within the Treasury Department, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has primary responsibilities for monitoring and pursuing illegal trafficking in and or sale of distilled spirits, tobacco, and firearms, including explosives. The Bureau utilizes some 1,600 special agents, conducts electronic surveillance operations, and has both undercover personnel and paid informers in its service. In addition to maintaining intelligence activities in support of its regular duties, the Bureau undoubtedly has an intelligence capacity regarding political candidate and foreign dignitary protection obligations which must be met on occasion. The U.S. Secret Service engages in intelligence operations in support of its responsibilities for protecting the President, presidential candidates, and certain foreign dignitaries, pursuing counterfeiters, and in cooperation with its police auxiliaries, Executive Protection Service, White House Police, and Treasury Security Force, the maintenance of security at certain federal and diplomatic facilities. The Secret Service presently consists of slightly more than 1,200 special agents plus administrative personnel. During fiscal year 1974, some segment of this workforce completed 15,403 protective intelligence cases and anticipated completing 16,000 such cases during the next fiscal year. The U.S. Customs Service, while largely a law enforcement agency, has an intelligence potential in such matters as narcotics and munitions control, prevention, and detection of terrorism in international transportation facilities, and enforcement of federal regulations affecting articles in international trade. The Internal Revenue Service, responsible for administering and enforcing the internal revenue laws other than those relating to alcohol, tobacco, firearms, explosives, and wagering, consists of a national office and a decentralized field staff organized into 7 regions containing 58 districts. The Intelligence Division, staffed with over 2,600 special agents, is the principal IRS intelligence component and is responsible for identifying willful noncompliance with the tax laws, as well as devious and complex methods utilized to avoid tax obligations. In addition to the use of informants, undercover operatives, and electronic surveillance, the Intelligence Division, until recently, maintained an intelligence gathering and retrieval system. Inaugurated in May 1969, this computerized databank of personal information was suspended in January 1975, after criticism was made that the system contained information of non-germane interest to a tax collection and enforcement agency, and that holdings constituted an invasion of privacy. This matter, certain surveillance activities involving the IRS office in Miami, Operation Leprechaun, and related spying operations have recently brought the agency's intelligence program under congressional scrutiny. Another controversial aspect of IRS intelligence operations involves the now defunct Special Service Staff established within the Compliance Division. Initially created in July 1969 as the Activist Organizations Committee, the unit came into existence, quote, apparently in response to pressures emanating from the White House and from Congress to ensure that dissident groups were complying with the tax laws. Several weeks before, at hearings before the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations of the Senate Committee on Government Operations on June 18, 1969, a former member of the Black Panthers had testified that it was his belief that the organization had never filed tax returns and had never been audited by the IRS. Similarly, an IRS official had raised the question of whether certain politically active groups, then tax-exempt, should continue to qualify for this status. End quote. In the aftermath of these events, Dr. Arthur Burns, counselor to the president, and Tom Charles Houston, a White House staffer concerned with security programs, began urging IRS to establish a special political intelligence component to deal with these tax matters. Quote, "The SSS was established in several organizational meetings held in the IRS during July 1969. During this time, the initial SSS personnel were chosen and the functions of the SSS were set out. The SSS was to coordinate activities in all compliance divisions involving ideological, militant, subversive, radical, and similar type organizations, to collect basic intelligence data, and to ensure that the requirements of the Internal Revenue Code concerning such organizations have been complied with. Also, some people associated with the SSS indicated that they believed the SSS was to play a role in controlling an insidious threat to the internal security of this country. The people involved with the SSS had a difficult time determining precisely what organizations and individuals to focus on. It appears from the staff's examination that the day-to-day focus of the SSS was largely determined by information it received from other agencies, such as the FBI and the Interdivisional Information Unit of the Justice Department. The SSS generally operated by receiving information from other investigative agencies and congressional committees, establishing files on organizations and individuals of interest, checking IRS records on file subjects, and referring cases to the field for audit or collection action. Also, the SSS provided information to the Exempt Organization Branch, technical, with respect to organizations whose exempt status was in question. This method of operation was established by late 1969. End quote. With the staff, which apparently never exceeded 8 individuals, the Special Service Unit began with the names of 77 organizations, and by the time it was disbanded in 1973, there is a total of 11,458 SSS files on 8,585 individuals and 2,873 organizations, with widely varying points of view from all points of the country and from many vocational and economic groups. In addition to identifying subjects for IRS scrutiny, the SSS also functioned as a reference source for White House intelligence actors. Assessing the experience of such special intelligence entities, one congressional scrutinizer of the Special Service staff observed, quote, "The Constitution guarantees every American the right to think and speak as he pleases without having to fear that the government is listening. There can be little doubt that political surveillance and intelligence gathering aimed at the beliefs, views, opinions, and political associations of Americans only inhibits the free expression which the First Amendment seeks to protect. Yet, the formation of governmental surveillance units is not a new occurrence. Throughout our nation's history, such programs have been instituted to protect national security interests which were perceived to be threatened. It is apparent, however, that the extraordinary political unrest of the late 60s had a powerful effect on those at the governmental helm. Using this as justification, they undertook to use the powers at their disposal to stifle and control the growing political dissidence and protest they were witnessing. The plain words of the Constitution were ignored. There is no evidence to indicate that the creation of so many secret intelligence units, as well as the expansion of existing units throughout the government at roughly the same time, was the result of any conscious conspiracy. But the fact remains that the contemporaneous creation of these units permitted an incipient arrangement whereby the special talents of investigation, prosecution, and administrative penalties, tax actions, most of the powers at the government's disposal, were leveled against those who chose to dissent, whether lawfully or otherwise. Although each agency may not have known specifically of another's intelligence program, the fruits of such units were freely exchanged so that each agency knew that another was also doing something. End quote. Footnote: U.S. Congress, Senate, Committee on the Judiciary, Political Intelligence in the Internal Revenue Service, pages 49 and 50. End footnote. Ultimately, the Special Service Staff operation came under question at the highest level of the Internal Revenue Service. Quote, in May 1973, one day after he was sworn in, Commissioner Donald C. Alexander met with top IRS personnel with respect to the SSS and directed that the SSS actions were to relate only to tax resistors. This was re-emphasized in a second meeting held at the end of June 1973. In early August 1973, the Commissioner learned of National Office responsibility for an IRS memorandum relating to the SSS published in Time magazine. The Commissioner felt that this memorandum described activities that were antithetical to the proper conduct of tax administration, and he announced on August 9, 1973, that the SSS would be disbanded. This is Our Hidden History.